to do one fun one. I look at you as the fun guy.
That's a mistake. How's everybody doing this morning?
Yeah.
Well, we wait for Jim to get up here with his coffee so he stays awake during this exciting talk.
For you, sir, I'm drinking
So
a
I'm
glass.
going to like refer back to the budget priorities.
I need all the caffeine I can get, sir.
I agree.
Importance, but
This weekend I watched
because I'm covering for Hadi too, so I'm going to talk
Ace
about
Ventura?
why T2 comes,
Pet Detective.
reform. And
Remember
then
that scene where
probably a little bit
breaks
deeper,
into
and I
the
know you would hit
billionaire
the
house,
top line on that. And
the
then
giant aquarium,
third thing I'll talk about is the
he thinks he
C2
found
C2, what
Snowflake,
we're dealing with in there.
and-
What are the big
and he falls
programs,
into-
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
falls into the great white.
So I'll see you
Shark
over at,
Tank.
I think conference
I know there's an
center
analogy
for
here you're
this
trying to get to here.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
not quite sure.
The last thing I remember him saying was, "That's not Snowflake." Some thoughts, and I think you've got a full 30 minutes, right?
Okay.
And what I thought we'd do, if it's okay with you, maybe just some initial discussion, and then throw it open to the audience,
Okay.
right? The first one, I guess, from my perspective, would be you're going to be responsible for $175 billion of the American taxpayers' money, and the real question is going to be, how are you going to measure that? What KPIs you're going to use? How will you show the American people success?
In order to answer that question, you got to start where we are today. The homeland today is relatively undefended. We have relied on the oceans to keep us safe. We have relied on the away game. And while we have been doing that, our adversaries have been watching, understanding how we fight, and they've become not only intent on holding the homeland at risk, they've become very capable at holding the homeland at risk. And we have got to rapidly change that defense equation to make sure that we have enough kit in the field to defend ourselves against a coercive, a decapitation, or a rogue nation attack against the homeland. So when you ask me what my KPIs are, can I defend against the threats as they have been identified by the Defense Intelligence Agency? We have measured those threats. We know what they are, whether they be a ballistic, a hypersonic, a cruise missile, or a counter 345 UAS. And will we, in a relatively short amount of time, have enough capability in the field to defend ourselves against those threats? That's how I'm measuring success.
Sir, what does being a true strategic partner mean to you? I know that there's some press report that Japan might join the Golden Dome architecture. So what would you be looking for from a strategic partner in any case?
For our strategic partners, what we're looking for is somebody that is operating, understanding our problem set. They are actively trying to solve our problem set. They are communicating transparently with us, and those partners are not just international partners. They're industry partners, they're academic partners, they're other government agency partners, et cetera. Because to get after something the size of Golden Dome, the problem we got to get after, it's going to take a full-on partnership of all of us operating with unity of effort. So a strategic partner is one that is trying to solve my problems, operating on behalf of the larger enterprise, and communicating exceptionally transparently.
Thank you. Just to build on that, sir, is there, of the architecture that you're building, are there any particular places, whether it's a traditional defense prime or a new entrant, are there any particular places where you'd be saying, hey, I need you to front load the software development, front load the IRAD, I need it now right here in front of 2026, and what handful of things would those be, sir, that you really, the biggest challenges that where you need the strategic partner?
I'm going to answer that in a couple different ways. If you look at what capabilities I need, it's pretty simple. Dissect the defense kill chain, and that quickly is going to tell you what I need. Starts off with the ability to sense the threat. I need to be able to go across the entire homeland to sense the threat. That's an enormous amount of data, whether that be active data or passive data. I need to bring all that data to bear and make sense out of that data. What is that threat? What's that threat capable of? Where's that threat going to go? How do I defeat that threat? Who's the best athlete to get against that threat? Then once I make that determination, I need to communicate that solution to a command and control capability to close the fire control loop with multiple interceptors. That is my kill chain. What I'm asking from industry is capacity, scalability, and affordability. We are not going to be able to defend the homeland the way we have conducted the away fight the scale is going to be too great. So we've got to flip our traditional equations on their head. How do I get higher magazine depth at lower cost per kill? There are many ways that we can do that, but a lot of that's going to come from the innovation in industry, the innovation in academia, some of the capabilities we're pursuing on the other government agencies, to bring to bear in that entire end-to-end defensive equation. So when you ask me where I need industry to invest, it's in scalability, affordability, and then how do I flip that traditional cost equation and get high magazine depth and low cost per kill?
Thank you, General. What you're trying to do is, to me, just mind-boggling, and it's going to be very, very rapid. What is your strategy for bringing feedback and continuous feedback from the end-user warfighter into your architecture as it evolves?
We have the Warfighter embedded in our office completely from end to end. They are in my front office. They are in partnering with industry on the development of command and control. They are partnering with industry on the development of effectors. General Gio, who's the commander at NORTHCOM, has embedded a 2-star in my office. He functions as my L&O back to NORTHCOM as well as my military deputy. I've got similar L&Os from STRATCOM, from INDOPACOM, and from U.S. Space Command to make sure that every step of the way we are embedding the operator in our decision calculus and in our development. And then we have a very rigorous test program in which we have operators sitting on console on a weekly basis giving feedback back to our developers on how well our capabilities are working or not working and what we should tweak and not tweak.
Thank you.
Building on that, sir, beyond the universe of General Gio, should I be thinking U.S. Space Command? Should I be thinking perhaps STRATCOM? Who are you're obviously trying to give as much decision space as the president as possible, right? Who else should we be thinking when you talk about the warfighter, that additional COCOMs that are going to be critical?
If you ask any one of our combatant commands if they have a homeland defense responsibility, and every single one of them is going to tell you yes. So in that vein, every single one of them are my customers. However, my number one customer is General Gio at NORTHCOM. I'm laser focused on General Gio. I have 3 secondary customers, one being U.S. Space Command, one being STRATCOM, and one being INDOPACOM. I have very close relationships with all 3 of those gentlemen in what we're doing. But when you step back and also look at the space capabilities that we're developing, they support all combatant commands simultaneously. So I really have all the combatant commanders as customers with a laser focus on NORTHCOM.
Thank you, General. As a former acquisition guy, I'm looking at what you're doing. I think the SHIELD multiple award contract was brilliant. I don't know how you're going to execute it, but I thought it was brilliant. What is your appetite for additional acquisition flexibility? And what authorities do you think you would be able to use that you don't have now?
So when the president signed out the executive order, it quickly became apparent to us that the traditional acquisition system was not going to be agile enough to get after what we needed. That's why the Secretary of War, Secretary Hegseth, stood up the direct report program manager, and then designated myself as a DRPM. I report directly to the deputy secretary and only the deputy secretary in that entire department. He is the only person that can tell me no. So I have full-on authorities that have been delegated to me from the Secretary of War. I have contracting authority, acquisition authority, technical authority, direct hiring authority, security authority, and a host of other authorities to allow me to run as fast as I possibly can. And then I have the ability to reach out across the entire department to include the agencies to leverage any other capabilities or contracts that they already have in place. So that allows me to move exceptionally fast. You mentioned the SHIELD contract. That's a Missile Defense Agency contract, IDIQ, with over 2,400 awardees on it. That's one of the tools that I can leverage to move fast in the acquisition environment, but it's not my only tool. I can use any other contract vehicle across the entire department to go fast.
That's quite interesting. I had not realized that. So by extension, sir, I presume if MDA, and I think I saw Lord DeSimone here somewhere earlier today, beyond the SHIELD IDIQ MAS contract, what should we be thinking in terms of like SBIs? who's handling that? Is that just SSC, or will there be
Yes.
an SDA? Or I didn't mean to get ahead of you, sir.
So when we stood up the Golden Dome office, we stood it up to be very lean and efficient. So I have a very flat organization, but I have decentralized execution across all the services and agencies. So when you bring up SBI, the Space Force through SSC, Space Systems Command, is developing SBI on my behalf. When you look at radars, I've got the Navy and Missile Defense Agency building radars. I've got the Army, the Navy, and Missile Defense Agency building munitions. We have a very decentralized execution approach. The only program that I'm executing so far out of my office is command and control. Everything else is decentralized out to the services and to the agencies.
Forgive me for this. I'm sorry, sir. You had mentioned the command and control. I think everyone realizes the importance of software. Could you give us a kind of a thumbnail sketch in terms of the command and control, maybe the fire control, how you're getting? I've heard anecdotes of how you're getting those teams to work together. That I think that would be incredibly helpful for the audience.
Yeah, so we recognized on day one that command and control was going to be our secret sauce of how we pull together all these various capabilities that were built in various stovepipes, whether that be services or agencies, et cetera. How do I take all these capabilities that were never meant to be integrated and networked together and bring them together into an enterprise manner of which Golden Dome requires? That was going to be really dependent on how we crafted the command and control capability. So early out of the gate, we were talking to industry, and industry did a self-formed consortium, started with 6 members that said, hey, we think we can all get together. None of us can deliver what you need on C2, but all of us working together think we can. They were off to the races. The way we have architected that relationship is I have independent contracts with each one of them. They operate as a unity. They decide what they're going to build, when they're going to build it, how they're going to build it, and who the best athlete amongst them is to build it. And then they hold themselves accountable on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. And then every Thursday night at 7 p.m., they come to brief me, and we take a demonstration on what they accomplished during that week. If at any point during that week, one of them did not carry their load, they can vote that individual or that company off the island. My chief engineer has the final say. They the recommendations to him. So far, that has not been required, but it is in the governance structure. Since then, we have brought on our 3 primes. So we have Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Northrop Grumman on as partners as well. So now we have a team of 9 building our command and control capability, which is really a glue layer that sits upon all these other services and agencies' C2 systems. So if you look at Missile Defense Agency uses C2BMC, Army uses IBCS, Air Force uses C3BM. Each one of those has a different command and control capability. We are architecting the glue layer above them, as well as the artificial intelligence to make sense out of that large amount of data that I told you we need to bring to bear on making sense out of what is the threat.
General, as you think about that glue layer, are you trying to publish any types of standards, open system architecture standards, so we prevent vendor lock-in and get the best of America in innovative engine?
Absolutely. We've mandated open systems architecture across the entire program, not just in C2, but across the entire enterprise, so that at any point I can unplug one provider and plug in a new provider as a new athlete comes to the table with something better and brighter, so that we are not stovepiped into a technology nor stovepiped into a single vendor or for perpetuity. We can actually unplug and plug in new ones at will.
Can I ask the pin dropping one, sir? I know your budget's 175, and after this, if it's okay with you, sir, we'll throw it open to audience questions. You've got 175 billion of the American taxpayers' money in your bank account. Why do I keep seeing estimates for trillions of dollars? What's the mismatch? What is it you know that the rest of us don't know, sir?
Okay, so let me start with, it's 185 billion. We were asked to procure some additional space capabilities. So we are at $185 billion for the objective architecture, which delivers way out into the 2035 timeframe. Currently, we have been allocated an enormous amount of national treasure on the order of about $25 billion from Congress, of which we are off and running and building out the foundation for Golden Dome. There's been numerous cost estimates out there in excess of $1 trillion I would say the difference between what they are estimating and what we are building is they're not estimating what I'm building. They're estimating a very large, complex capability, fully integrated, using technologies that we currently use to fight the away game. That kit is very expensive. That kit is self-contained. That kit is very manpower intensive. It's meant to operate independently on the battlefield for a different type of fight than what we have to do in the homeland. As a result, that kit is very, very expensive and very, very complex to build and takes a lot of time. We are changing that equation for Golden Dome, simplifying it, if you will, disaggregating it, if you will, to bring down that cost equation and not exceed that $185 billion that the President has committed to the nation.
General, one more question before the floor, because this one, I'm fascinated with it. I went back and read the executive order. You have a mandate to deliver by 2028. What are the things that you worry most about and could prevent progress over the next couple of years that would impede your succeeding with that mission?
So in the executive order, I do not have a 2028 mandate inside the executive order. However, the President did ask us to rapidly change the defensive equation of the nation as fast as we possibly can and put a marker on there for the summer of 2028. So by the summer of 2028, I have to demonstrate the ability with operational capability deployed in the field to defend ourselves against those threats as identified in the executive order. That's what they have asked us to do. And when you ask me what keeps me awake at night, it's can I scale? Can the industrial base, which has been optimized for efficiency for generations, can we suddenly change that equation and start scaling and becoming more efficient, more effective? That is not just a material problem, it's also a labor problem. We are working hand in hand with industry. Secretary Feinberg has been working a lot on munitions, as you've been reading, and even rare earth metals. We need to take that to the next step with additional things like sensors and comm and et cetera going forward. And then can we keep the sense of urgency necessary to energize this industrial base and this nation to get after the fight?
Got a question right here. Thank you, General. Nick Curtin, former Director of Operational Test and Evaluation. Question for you on the point Al brought up earlier about open architecture and standards and modularity. How are you going to prove it? How are you asking industry to make sure that you actually can change things out over time?
The systems that we are building are designed intentionally from the start to be open architecture. And through the rigorous test program and the fact that our C2 community can vote each other off the island if a new athlete comes to the table, the way we are defining our launchers for our effectors, our open architecture can accept any effector. We have a complete open architecture from end to end, from that sensing capability to the making sense to the command and control, fire control, and even to the interceptors.
Over here, sir.
Sir, on your far left, Bill Conley, Chief Technology Officer at Mercury Systems. So, having been in a role somewhat similar to yours at a lower level a couple years back, right now you have the ability to bring the entire integrated team, all the services, all of the agencies along with you. If we look 5 years into the future, early 2030s, do we need a direct reporting PM as an enduring, or do you view the capability as ultimately fitting back into the agencies and the services? How do we think about that?
We are actually planning to disband the DERPM concept once we get the momentum and get the capability into the field and fold that back into the services and into the agencies. When we stood up the manpower documents and everything for Golden Dome is temporary. There is not an enduring manpower document or any of that kind of stuff going forward. So the intent is to stand down at some point in the future.
A silly question, sir. Yeah, I'm over here. I'm sorry, sir. I'm trying to move to be as mobile and fleeting as possible from you, sir.
Like that fleeting part.
Yes, sir. First, I underestimated the $10 billion, right? Secondly, within that $185 billion, sir, things are going to fail. Some pieces. You mentioned voting people off the island without being inappropriate. You've got 3 years from now till 2028. What things in your mind have already failed and you've replaced? What things do you think are high risk and potential risk of failing?
We have not had anything fail yet. We've had numerous successful tests that I can't really go into in this environment. If I was to predict where the biggest amount of risk is in space-based interceptor, and it's not the technology, it's the scalability and the affordability. Can we scale those solutions fast enough and affordable enough to be effective against the threat is really where the challenge is going to be, and that's really where the industry is really sharpening their pencils.
And at the risk of being silly, is there like a rough order of magnitude dollar in your mind that you're thinking affordability for an SBI or a boost phase or a mid-course?
There is, but I can't communicate it in here.
Yes, sir. Understood, sir.
Hi, Shelley Mesh with Inside Defense. You mentioned that your plans for Homeland Defense are not going to be at the same expense as some of these capabilities for OCONUS operations. Can you talk about why that would be, especially when you're talking about the immense scale of this? What are you doing to ensure that this comes in at a lower cost?
Yes, ma'am. So if you look at every weapon system we have, whether that be an airplane, a tank, a missile, a ship, they all have one thing in common. They're all built for the overseas fight, for the away game, which means they are self-contained. It means I have my command and control, my comms, my propulsion, my weapon system, whatever my effector is, in many cases the human. And they are all built to operate independently on the battlefield if they were disconnected from the larger enterprise. When you do that, when you build that capability, it takes an enormous amount of time, it's very exquisite, and it costs an enormous amount. I don't need that level of ruggedization or independence operating inside the homeland. I can disaggregate the sensor from the shooter. I can take the human out of the loop, bring in artificial intelligence to bear. I can rely on shore power where overseas I have to bring my own generators. I can rely on triple redundant comms in CONUS because I have an abundance of communication capabilities in CONUS. When you start disaggregating all that kit and putting it together into a different form factor, you can start to drive that price down. But that's only going to get us so far down that cost curve and driving that cost per kill down and the magazine depth up. We're also going to now have to start relying on next generation technology that we've always been on the cusp of delivering. So we're working really closely with the national labs and with the Director of Research and Engineering to bring to bear some of that next generation tech to drive down that cost per kill and drive up the magazine depth.
One over here, sir.
Hi, Drew Fitzgerald, the Wall Street Journal. Just curious, is there any cost estimate, at least year one, this fiscal year, or the next couple of years, for the cost of this C2 layer that you're developing? And second question, on this consortium of, I guess, 9 contractors that are working on that layer, is there any prime contractor or leader of the group that's kind of directing the traffic for the rest of them?
Yeah, good question. Let me start with the back. There is no lead contractor. Government is the integrator. Government owns the technical baseline. But that group of 9 partners are operating independently of each other and holding each other accountable through peer pressure, if you will, to perform. And so far, it's working phenomenal. We're about 6 months into it. It's going great. As far as a cost estimate for C2, we probably will not release one directly on any specific element, but there was a cost estimate done at the beginning of the program, an independent cost estimate for the entire Golden Dome program.
For the C2 layer, there's no individual cost estimate?
Correct.
Hi, Thomas DeVilli with Defense One. Earlier this year, House and Senate lawmakers called for transparency in the $23 billion in funding provided for Golden Dome. Has that been given to lawmakers yet? Has that breakdown of costs been provided? Relatedly, a recent breakdown of reconciliation funding provided from the Pentagon to Congress showed that billions in Golden Dome-related programs were still pending approval. Is that still the case, and why was that being slow-rolled?
The transparency part, I have personally briefed all 6 committees numerous times on everything that we're doing on Golden Dome to include the detailed costs of what Golden Dome is going to cost. And all of the funding for Golden Dome under reconciliation has flowed. And we've got a very close partnership with OMB and NSC on the execution of those funds.
Oh, there's one over there, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So the question was, can I talk a little bit more about C2? Say it one more time, C2.
What has that group, can you tell us
What have they
anything about what
accomplished?
they've demonstrated, and are you making progress toward that summertime target of
Yes, ma'am.
an initial demonstration?
The C2 group has done a tremendous amount to include a live demonstration of their capability, and we compared their capability against the legacy Missile Defense Agency and Army capability, and they were comparable. So we know they're on the right path to deliver what we're asking them to by this summer and by 2028. As far as the $10 billion additional, we were asked to accelerate some space capabilities to move the current program schedules from the right to the left, and they gave us $10 billion extra to accelerate those capabilities with the United States Space Force. It would be AMTI, Space Data Network, and HBTSS.
Sir, I'm behind you. I'm sorry. I was
Sneaking all over the place.
I was sneaking up on you. Was there any more there, sir? You mentioned your openness to new entrants. Right. So what? Just only you can see the proposals you're getting, but there's an explosion of new entrants, particularly space entrants, LEO, all sorts of constellations coming up. What are the types of proposals that you're welcoming? Number one, in terms of other than the traditional cost plus type activity. How might the SBI competitions be different, a little bit more risk? And then, of course, sir, would you be willing, this is a terrible thing to say, my wife's going to smack me later, would you be willing to take an equity stake in one of the new entrants if that was something that you thought would be critical to the mission?
So I can answer the last one. The equity stake thing is not in my AOR.
Yes, sir.
That's in the Deputy Secretary.
I'm sorry, sir.
I'm sorry. Up to them. As far as new entrants go, I am entertaining any conversation with any industry provider, academia provider, or other government agency that can change that magazine depth cost per kill equation. I'm laser focused on that. That is going to be how we solve the Golden Dome problem. And it's going to take all the innovation coming out of industry and out of academia to solve that problem. So I have met with well over 400 companies independently one-on-one, having conversations back and forth like we are here today. I'm willing to have even more. We have an industry advisory council of industry titans that come in once a quarter and advise me on what they're seeing in industry. I have a private equity and investment capital group as well that are advising me as well. I have graybeards that are advising me, trying to tap into every nook and cranny of our industrial base to understand what's in the realm of the possible and what I can bring to bear on our problems.
Well answered. Sir, we've got maybe 2 minutes left.
Yep, General, I have one follow-on question. It kind of comes back to you're talking about driving the cost per kill down. And I recognize, because I ran R&E for about 5 years, you may not be able to answer this question other than very broadly. What technologies do you see that would be promising for bringing the cost to kill down? Or said another way, what should people who are in the tech world think about helping you with?
I think the biggest potential benefit is going to be directed energy, non-kinetics, left of launch type of things that we have always been on the cusp of delivering, but have never quietly delivered. And I'll argue that's because there's always something better that just pops out right at the last second, and we immediately go chase the next brightest thing. And we don't take what we already built and get it out into the field. Part of Golden Dome is changing that equation as fast as I possibly can. So I want to take what already exists and get it out in the field and give it a shot, see if it's going to be effective against the threat. The next thing is going to be we have to process an enormous amount of data. So next generation processing capability as well as artificial intelligence are going to be the next two biggest things that I leverage for Golden Dome. Yes, ma'am.
Beasley with Defense Scoop. So the department has struggled, and we're working on doing cross-domain C2 and cross-service C2 for the last couple of years with CJAD C2. So how are you working to ensure that Golden Dome C2 is effective at where there's been some problems in the past? Are you looking at like an NC3 type of model? You know, what are your thoughts there?
We are trying to leverage what everybody's already done, so not starting over and not asking them to change their vector. So you mentioned JAD C2. There's a whole host of other ones, C3BM, Kronos. The list goes on and on and on of the command and control capabilities. What we did not want to do is ask any of them to go back into their code and start redoing their code. So we wanted to start trying to, how do I stitch all these things together into an enterprise? That's where we're focusing. Then we wanted to leverage the best we could get out of industry to be able to bring to bear on those new entrants on solving those C2 and software problems. Over the past 5 years, there's been an enormous amount of companies that have emerged that are very good at software, at looking at AI, looking at ML, and a whole host of other technologies. We want to bring those to bear on stitching together all those other tactical C2 systems.
Sir, I think, Al, did you have one?
Nope, we're down to 19 seconds.
We do. The speaker's prerogative, sir. We do have 2 minutes between each speaker for a transition period.
I have 10 seconds?
Let me
9,
stand in front of that so you can't
8.
see that. So somebody pull the plug. Are there a couple of, as you walk off the stage, what are the handful of things that you really need us to know?
First and foremost, the reason we have Golden Dome is because the nation is relatively undefended. We have got to rapidly change that equation. World events are just showing just how dangerous the environment has gotten. We have a numerous amount of threats out there that we've got to start fielding capability to make sure we can defend the American public again, and I mean the entire homeland, not just CONUS. The second thing I would say is what you're reading about and hearing the Secretary talk about Arsenal of Freedom is actually real. We are trying to pivot the culture of the entire department to get after agile acquisitions. We are trying to empower our acquirers to move faster. We're trying to eliminate bureaucracy where we can. We're trying to leverage industry, the innovation coming out of industry, the capabilities coming out of industry as much as we can. And Golden Dome is a test ground and the proving ground for a lot of those capabilities. The department is serious about that. I cannot overstate how serious they are about that change under Arsenal of Freedom.
That's the mic drop moment, sir.
Thank you.
Well done.
Guys, have a great day.
Mr. Joe Welch will be coming up next from the Army. Colonel Munt, you have the floor, sir.
Hey, Jim. How are you? Oh, great. Yeah. Looking forward to it, man. Okay, thanks.